On this edition of Independent Sources, Hispanic Homeowners, why President Trump's policies may be harming the housing sector, and in White and Black, the plight of Palestinians explored through art.
Independent Sources, your window to the city's ethnic and immigrant communities. Here's your host, Garry Pierre-Pierre.
President Trump's deportation policies may be crippling the country's housing sector. That's according to a report released by the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, or NAHREP. The annual State of Hispanic Homeownership report comes at a time when the country's housing market is rebounding from the catastrophic crash of a few years ago. It finds that Hispanic homeowners make up nearly half of new buyers and that almost a third of the construction workers involved in the industry are undocumented. The report has already been criticized for taking a hostile partisan tone to President Trump's policies by an industry magazine. NAHREP's executive director, Marissa Calderon, joined me via Skype to talk about the report's findings. Marissa, the story of Hispanic home ownership has been largely untold until your report. So what's behind the rise in Hispanic home ownership in America?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for having me. Hispanics are, as the report notes, driving home ownership in the country and have been for the past several years, and for 2 years consecutively have increased the rate of home ownership while the country's overall rate has declined. And it's precipitated really by a couple of things. From a household formation perspective, so people living in a house, Hispanics have increased their household formations more rapidly than any other group. And then on top of that, they're increasing the home ownership rate as well. So more and more people that are Hispanic are forming households, and a greater percentage of those are becoming homeowners, largely because of the aspiration toward home ownership as being really core and central to family.
Why is it that, Hispanics want to have this American dream, this piece of American dream of home ownership?
Yeah, so through several different surveys, we've shown that Hispanics view home as a stabilizing force, as a really great way to build wealth, as a way to be able to provide a place to raise children that is a safe place, and just part of the culture is really a family-centered element, and being able to have a place that is yours, that is stable, that you control, is a really critical element of being able to be successful. And so that's why homeownership is really core to one of the values that Hispanics hold close.
Okay. So according to your report, this trend will likely continue, but ironically, Hispanics are having a hard time getting mortgage. How do you reconcile the two?
So there are indeed some barriers associated with more Hispanics becoming homeowners. And Hispanics, for example, participate, and this is largely true of those who are first-time buyers, they participate in credit differently than other groups. So a lot of Hispanics tend to be underbanked or unbanked at those entry-level tiers. That's not the case for all Hispanics. Some Hispanics are actually improving certainly their financial circumstance really greatly. But because of how they participate differently in credit, then they tend to be unscored or unscorable more so than other groups. So about 30% of all Hispanics are credit invisible, which makes it hard for them to get a credit score that is going to be helpful to be qualified to purchase a home, even though they're otherwise well suited to purchase a home.
So why is there credit invisible, as you call it? I mean, that's the first time I'm hearing this term. I'm fascinated by it. What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it means that that you are not using credit vehicles that are common in the U.S. to other consumers, okay, like a trade line for an auto or credit cards, because there's a heavy use on a cash economy. And so even though you may have the means, because that income or those means are not in a bank, or they're not you're not using a credit card that gives you credit experience on your credit score over time, it's harder with the way that we evaluate credit today to determine their creditworthiness. And so some of what the report recommends is that we should modify the way that credit is evaluated based on the fact that the consumer patterns are changing. And these credit evaluation patterns that are used today are antiquated. They don't properly evaluate people based on how they use credit today, and that's especially true for Hispanics.
Okay. Marissa, did you break down the demographics into Black Hispanics, and if so, are they having a harder time than if you were to call white Hispanics?
So our group looks at Hispanics as a whole, as opposed to separating racial significance within Hispanics overall. So Hispanics overall do tend to have a tougher time getting qualified for mortgages than non-Hispanic whites, for example.
Okay, so you had some criticism about the report, and I'm going to read a quote from to highlight that the fact that some people took issue with the premise of the report, and let me quote it here. It says, "The report took a hostile partisan tone regarding President Trump's policies on dealing with illegal immigration, refusing to acknowledge that undocumented Hispanics are breaking U.S. immigration laws through their presence in the country. Instead, the report insisted that deportations would have a negative impact on the residential construction." How do you respond to that?
Well, so I'm happy to say that NARP is a nonpartisan organization. So we definitely are advocates of Latino issues and housing and where they intersect. And if you read the report, then you'll notice that we do indeed talk about the undocumented and increasing deportation rates. And we actually trend that back to the Obama administration, which was a different party administration than the current administration. And so ours is a historical look at the increasing number of deportations that have taken place over time and the sort of impact that that increasing number of deportations has had specifically on foreclosure rates. And so what we found was that where deportations have increased dramatically, that those neighborhoods tend to have more foreclosures, because effectively what's happening is those whom are being deported are largely working Latino men. And that's across the country. And when you take the breadwinner out of the home, then naturally that has a substantial impact on that household's ability to really maintain the mortgage and participate fully in the economy. And so that's what we talk about. We don't talk about anything that's specific to a given administration, but the increasing deportations did occur during the Obama administration, not the current one. But they're certainly projecting to further increase that, which we feel would be problematic.
You mentioned about the impact on the construction industry if a large amount of Latinos are deported. Can you talk to us further about that and the role that Latinos play in the construction industry?
Sure. So overall, about 30% of the construction workforce is Hispanic. That's irrespective of status. About 15% of all construction workers are also undocumented. And so this is an industry that already has a shortfall of skilled labor, tradesmen, individuals who are very, very well skilled to be able to do roofing, masonry, other things that are really important and part and parcel to the construction industry. About 158,000 construction industry jobs are unfilled right now because there's an absence of skilled labor. And so what our report suggests is if the current administration goes through with its plans to deport substantial numbers of the undocumented who are here, and those people also happen to be employed within the construction industry, that's going to exacerbate an existing dearth of skilled labor within that industry, which is going to make it harder to build homes. And there's already a shortage of homes in the country right now that are available for sale. So it's going to have a detrimental impact on the housing industry overall and ultimately the country.
So again, I revert back to the question I posed earlier. Why are Latinos so attracted to this industry?
Well, within the construction industry, they have the skill and talent, and Hispanics who come to this country to work and work hard, and they view the America as a place that can help them to accomplish that dream of a better life. And so, if you have this ready, willing, and skilled labor force that is able to help the construction industry to create more homes for sale for all Americans, then we view that as a good thing.
Marisa Calderon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Stay tuned. When we come back, a May Day March for immigrant rights. Thanks for staying tuned. The wave of anti-Trump activism around the country will continue on May 1st when hundreds of thousands are expected to take to the streets to protest the president's immigration policies. The event is being organized by several grassroots and labor groups, including Make the Road New York and 32BJ SEIU. Zyphris Lebrun spoke with Yatziri Tovar of Make the Road New York and Lenore Friedlander, the assistant to the president of local 32BJ SEIU.
Yatziri Tovar and Lenore Friedlander, thank you for being in studio today.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. So let's start with this action coming up on May 1st. Rise Up New York, Immigrants' Rights and Worker Rights. It's an event that's being planned for May 1st. Tell me a little bit about what this event is and why it's being conducted, Lenore.
Well, May 1st is a day that for about the last 10 years, immigrant workers and have been out on the street protesting and really standing up for the rights of immigrant workers and pointing out the importance of immigrant workers to our economy. Fighting for fair treatment, the path to citizenship, and especially in this political moment, we believe it's really important for people of all backgrounds to come out and stand together to support tolerance and inclusion and against the kind of drastic, inhumane, and unjust policies that are coming out of the White House and out of Congress at this moment. So 5 p.m. Monday, May 1st at Foley Square.
Okay. Now, is this going to be something that's focused here in New York only, or is it going to be something that's national?
It's actually a nationally coordinated day of action, and there are going to be huge protests in Washington, D.C. and throughout the country. And really, wherever people live, there's a protest near you, so you can look it up. And for people in the New York City area, we're really encouraging people to come out, to join together, to stand up for tolerance and inclusion and speak out against the kind of draconian policies that are currently in force.
Now, Yatziri, one of the things that's kind of been happening is that there's a wave of these sorts of protests and so forth. Do you think that there is a certain amount of protest fatigue that might be underlying some of what's going on now at all?
I don't think so. I think protesting is a way for us to show that we're resisting, and not only that, but that we're together in this, because we've seen it. Every time this administration attacks one of our communities, every member of our community comes out. It doesn't matter where you were born, how did you get here, what religion you are. I mean, we saw that with the Muslim ban. We saw how when that happened, everyone, no matter what religion they believed in, they came out and they filled JFK and all the airports around the country, and we just showed that unity. And so I think May Day is just another day to show that we're together, that we're coming out, we're resisting against this administration. And it's a big action. It's like it was mentioned, it's a day of action throughout the country, and it's just showing more and more that whatever comes our way, the community is going to take the streets, and we're going to keep on doing it. We're not going to get tired of it. If it takes us the 4 years for us to be protesting every weekend, then it's going to be done.
What kind of numbers are you guys expecting, perhaps?
Well, in New York, we're expecting about 50,000 people.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. Now, one of the things that's going to happen over the course of this day of protest is that there are going to be Know Your Rights seminars. So, for the audience, could you explain what exactly those are?
Well, they're sort of trainings of also explaining what are your rights, regardless of immigration status or regardless of what religion you're from. It shows that they're trainings basically that you do have rights, no matter your immigration status, and that you should know them. And I think that everybody should, whoever can attend these trainings should, because they're able to, if they weren't stopped by the police, if they're stopped by ICE, they know what to do. They know what to do and what not to do and how to deal with the situations. And I think in this time, unfortunately, we have to be prepared for whatever it is. And these trainings give you that. They give you the tools to not only what to do on this, what happens at the moment, but also what happens after and how to continue on.
Now, 32BJ, I know Lenore is involved as well in these sorts of programs. How exactly are they involved and how extensive are these programs?
Well, our membership is very diverse. We have members of many different backgrounds from many different countries, and we do a lot of providing information, workshops, educational work with our members so that they're aware of their rights, both on the job as well as off the job. So part of the workshops and the importance of workshops is for members of the community, whether they're in the union or outside of the union, to understand what to do and what not to do if they're stopped by the police or if they're stopped by an immigration enforcement officer or somebody from ICE. And it can mean the difference between being deported and not being deported.
Right.
And I would say, I think, we're very fortunate to live in a sanctuary city, and part of and that the city administration is also providing legal services to immigrants and undocumented workers, and that's something that many cities don't have. And part of standing up and speaking out is to say that we're not going to be intimidated by attempts coming out of the White House or attempts of this administration to retaliate against the city, to cut funding for the city or the state because it has declared itself a sanctuary and is welcoming to people from all over, immigrants, refugees, documented or undocumented.
Do you find that people know any of their rights? Do you find that folks are aware of what can and cannot be done to them, or what rights they have as immigrants to this country?
I think they're becoming more aware now. They realize that this administration is attacking a lot of our communities, so I feel that they know the reality and they need to be prepared for it. So people are wanting to learn their rights. I've definitely seen that around in my community, or if some people don't attend the trainings because of different things, they also are learning through the words of mouth. And sometimes sometimes all the information is not completely accurate, but at least they have some information of what to do or what not to do. But definitely it's important to attend these trainings so that they can get all their information that they can be able then to know their rights, know what they should do, and that way if they're confronted by any of these things, they would know what to do.
Now, the Foley Square event that's coming up, how exactly do you guys see it processing? Is it going to go through the streets of Manhattan, or is it going to be focused in the square itself?
I think what we're really encouraging people is to come out and protest and to be part of the action and to be at Foley Square at 5 p.m. and join with thousands of other New Yorkers in really, standing up for the rights of immigrant workers.
Now, 32BJ and Make the Road New York are only two partners involved in this action. Who are some of the other organizations that are partnering with you guys in this event?
I know of NYIC. That's also the New York Immigration Coalition.
Okay.
That's joining us.
Yeah, I think my sense is that it's a pretty broad coalition, and that every year on May 1st, there's an organized protest in New York. And this year, more than ever, it's really important for people to come, whether you've been to a protest the day before, the week before. This is kind of the moment that everybody has to show up. And it's a weekend where there's going to be a lot of protests. On April 29th, there's a big march around the climate and the importance of, of standing up and fighting for, good jobs, clean water, clean air, and it's just that moment that, the call to conscience is to really come out and protest and join together with others.
Yeah, and I think as she mentioned, it's not only about the immigrant community, it's also about our Muslim and refugees brothers and sisters. It's also about workers' rights. So it's all these different communities and different organizations that are coming together.
Right, so using a coalition to get the word out rather than an individual cause, a single cause rather.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, Jatsiri Tovar and Lenore Friedlander, thank you very much for being in studio today.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
Still ahead, political cartoons from the Palestinian perspective. finally from us, On the Shelf. This week we focus on the book White and Black, a collection of drawings from the Palestinian artist Mohamed Sabaneh. The artist says he wants to use the book as a means of portraying a real picture of his people. I sat down with him to learn more about what prompted him to create this book. Mohamed Sabaneh, welcome to Independent Sources. Great book. I really enjoy looking at these drawings, very powerful. Now, you look like a very upstanding young man. Why were you in jail?
You know, most of Palestinians now, around 7,000 Palestinians in Israeli jail for many reasons, and sometimes without any reason. As a cartoonist, I think that was the main reason that I've been in Israeli jail, because I'm drawing about what's happening in Palestine and the condition that the Palestinians living in Palestine. That's what I do, drawing cartoon, and I think this is the main reason to be in jail.
Oh, okay. So basically you were thrown in jail for doing your work?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that, you say it's very common for Palestinians?
Yeah, it's very common for Palestinians. Now more than 7,000 Palestinians inside the jail, most of them without any trial for anything, some of them for administrative detention, and maybe you heard about the hunger strike, the Palestinian now on for more than 8 days.
Yeah, he almost died, if I understand, if I remember correctly. But anyway, so you thrown in jail, and so you have solitary confinement, and you have nothing to do, obviously. And then, how did you pick up writing this project?
Actually, when I was in jail, they put me around 2 weeks alone in a small cell, and I thought that I should make something to thinking about, just to break this silence inside the jail. And
so you were bored, you had nothing to do?
Yeah, and because they want to fight you by and torture you by the loneliness inside the cell, and when you find something to thinking about, something to doing inside the jail, that will kill the time and the silence around you. That's why I started to think that I should make some cartoon about Palestinian prisoner inside jail, talk about their issues in conditions, how the jailer deal with the Palestinian prisoner. And I decided to make like an exhibition about the Palestinian prisoner when I release, and that's why I started to think about some of these cartoons, digging on the details inside the prison. And there is actually something else, because always we are talking about the Palestinian prisoner as heroes, but we forget that they are also human beings and will miss their family, their kids, their normal life. And that's what I felt when I was in the prison, and that's why I started to think about all the Palestinian issues from a humanitarian perspective.
What do you want people to take away from this book?
I want the people to understand the real condition that the Palestinians are living in, not just the political issue that the people outside maybe they can know it from books or from news or something like that, but how's the normal life for Palestinians going on, for Palestinians, the checkpoints, walls, and all of these things affects badly on the Palestinian life inside the prison, not just from the political perspective. Even the normal life is stopped because all of these conditions. And maybe sometime all the people around the world just talk about the prisoner, but there's no one talk about their families and the people who will missing them outside. There is another side for all of our issues. We should concern about it, and we should show the people what's happening with the people inside Palestine.
Well, let's show the audience, and I want you to talk about this picture that we have on screen right now. It's about children. It's something that we often don't think about, children in jail. Explain to us why you drew this design.
Actually, there is more than 300 Palestinian kids inside the Israeli prison now. The smaller one, his name is Shadi Farrah now. His mother told me that he became dependent on himself inside the prison because he's alone. That's why I should draw about all the kids inside the prison. What's going on inside the prison with the kids? When you are thinking about kids 13 years old, just 13 years old inside the prison, it's very hard to be there. That's why I draw it's look like normal life, but it's inside the prison. That's the cartoon. I want to talk that the Palestinian kids want to live their normal life, but they are inside the prison.
Mm-hmm. And we have another one we want to talk to you about, is the one about Santa Claus that you drew. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because people don't, again, this is counterintuitive when you think about Palestinian and that whole region, you don't think about Santa Claus.
Here I'm talking about about the checkpoints around the West Bank, around the Holy Land in Beit Lahem. That's because like Santa Claus want to go to Beit Lahem, but there is a lot of checkpoints around Beit Lahem. He can't get in there and go to the kids there.
So basically, even the image you wanted people to capture is that even if Santa Claus were to try to get into Israel, he couldn't.
He couldn't. Yeah, he couldn't. That's the main message from this cartoon, actually, because you know Santa Claus brings the happiness for the people and the kids, and the checkpoint and Israeli soldier preventing him to go in Beit Lahem.
Mm-hmm. There's also a meaning to the book's title, White and Black, political cartoons from Palestine. Why, usually we think of black and white, but this time you juxtapose it to white and black. Why?
The white is the color for hope, and I hope that we will have this hope and brightness future for Palestinians when we talk about them. I know all of this cartoon inside the book talk about the sadness and the hard condition inside Palestine, but in title I hope that we will reach our hope and our dream. From the title, you will see it.
Okay. Mohammed Sabane, I know you're in New York in the United States for about a month doing a book tour. The book is widely available. Good luck. Thank you for joining us on Independent Sources.
Thank you.
White and Black, political cartoons from Palestine is available at bookstores everywhere and online. That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.